TSA officer harasses black woman, regrets it when she flashes her pilot badge. John F. Kennedy International Airport bustled with dawn's frantic energy, rolling suitcases on polished floors, overhead announcements echoing from every corner, and travelers juggling phones, coffees, and last-minute goodbyes. In the midst of this hectic scene stood Jade Randall, poised, unassuming, and just trying to catch her flight. But she couldn't shake a tingle of apprehension as she inched toward the front of the TSA security line. Today, her routine trip would veer into unexpected territory the moment a brash Transportation Security Administration officer zeroed in on her. By the time Jade reached for her ID, tension rippled through the air. No one had any idea who she truly was. The clock read 5:45 a.m. at John F. Kennedy International Airport, but the energy in Terminal 4 felt more like noon. Travelers roamed in every direction, some rubbing sleep from their eyes, others checking departure boards for last-minute changes. People fresh from transatlantic flights dragged carry-ons while sipping Starbucks lattes, and families corralled children eager to embark on their first trip to Disney World. Within this swirling mass of humanity stood Jade Randall, adjusting the strap of her sleek black backpack. She was on her way to Chicago for a critical training session hosted by her airline's pilot development program. Jade wore a casual outfit, dark jeans, a fitted navy sweater, and sneakers that looked both stylish and airport-friendly. No one would have guessed she was actually a commercial pilot, newly promoted to first officer for one of the nation's largest carriers. She always traveled incognito when off-duty, preferring to avoid fuss or questions from curious passengers. As a black woman in aviation, Jade had often been greeted with disbelief, sometimes positive surprise, sometimes not so positive. Over time, she learned to keep her professional credentials under wraps unless necessary. She approached the TSA checkpoint like any other passenger. Her flight was in 90 minutes, leaving her plenty of time to navigate security and grab breakfast before boarding. She joined the snaking line that wound around silver stanchions. Though the line was long, the TSA staff seemed efficient, funneling people through scanners and X-ray machines. Jade busied herself by scrolling her phone, checking weather updates, gate changes, and email notifications about the upcoming advanced training she was due to attend. It was a proud milestone. Her airline had chosen her for a cutting-edge program aimed at grooming experienced first officers for eventual captain upgrades. As the line inched forward, Jade glanced around at the typical early-morning airport scene. Business travelers cradling laptops, families wrangling kids, and backpackers rummaging for passports. She spotted an older man wearing a pilot's uniform from a major carrier, heading to the crew line. She nodded to him in silent kinship, but he likely assumed she was just another passenger. No problem, Jade felt comfortable in her anonymity. She wasn't prepared, however, for the gauntlet she was about to face. Behind the security station, a stocky TSA officer named Frank Kowalski kept a watchful, if somewhat scornful, eye on the stream of travelers. His colleagues noticed his surliness more than usual that morning. Maybe he'd slept poorly, or maybe the routine stress of his job had accumulated into barely contained irritation. Within the labyrinth of lines, Jade caught his attention for reasons he might not have consciously recognized. Perhaps the quiet confidence in her stance, or the reflexive biases that sometimes surface in the hustle of security screening. Jade placed her backpack in a grey bin, along with her jacket, shoes, and a small pouch containing electronics. She slid her phone on top, making sure to remove any items that might cause the scanner to beep. As she pushed the bin forward, her eyes flicked up to meet Officer Kowalski's gaze. A tightening in her gut made her hold his stare for a second longer than usual. His expression was cold, almost suspicious. "Next," he barked, beckoning Jade to step into the body scanner. The uniform's dark blue fabric stretched tightly over his broad shoulders. He gestured impatiently for her to raise her arms, and she complied, trying not to roll her eyes at his abrupt tone. She reminded herself that all it took was one offhand remark to escalate a small conflict at security. Better to remain polite and get through without drama. The scanner made a soft beep, and Jade stepped out, expecting the usual wave off from a different TSA officer. Instead, Kowalski motioned her aside. "MAAM, wait here," he said, his voice crisp. He scanned the readout on his screen, then turned to her. "I need to do an additional pat-down. Are you carrying anything unusual?" Jade frowned. "No, I've removed everything that might trigger an alarm." He didn't let her pass. "Extend your arms," he ordered. Reluctantly, she did so. Another TSA officer, a woman named Trina, approached to perform the pat-down, but Kowalski waved her away, insisting he would handle it. Trina raised an eyebrow but obeyed. Kowalski proceeded with an abrupt, borderline invasive pat-down that was more forceful than Jade had ever experienced. She stiffened, enduring the discomfort, aware of the stares from fellow travelers. "All right, you can move on," he finally said, stepping back. She exhaled, her heart thrumming with indignation. Still, Jade grabbed her backpack from the conveyor, slipped her shoes back on, and tried to tamp down her annoyance. But as she turned to walk away, Kowalski's voice cut through the air again. "Miss, I need to see the contents of your bag." At that, Jade paused, clenching her jaw. This was definitely not the standard random check. He'd already forcibly patted her down. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze. "May I ask what you're looking for?" He crossed his arms, ignoring her question. "Please step over to the inspection table." He motioned to a side station. The line of travelers behind them shuffled awkwardly, some rolling their eyes at the slowdown, others sneaking sympathetic or curious glances at Jade. She complied, though her patience was fraying. Kowalski unzipped her backpack, pulling out her iPad, toiletries, a small case of sunglasses, a snack bar, and her personal grooming kit. He rummaged through them, seeming to linger unnecessarily. Jade inhaled slowly, mentally counting backward from 10 to maintain composure. This wouldn't be the first time she'd been singled out under flimsy pretenses, but it never got easier. Finally, Kowalski tapped the side of her toothpaste tube, apparently unsatisfied. "You're sure everything in here is regulation size?" "Yes, it's under the 3.4-ounce limit," she replied. Her voice trembled with repressed anger. He dropped it back in the bag, rummaged a moment more, then stepped back, his scowl unwavering. "Fine, you can go," he said, as though she were an inconvenience he couldn't wait to discard. Jade nodded stiffly, repacking her belongings. All she wanted now was to leave the checkpoint and find some quiet corner to calm down. But just as she zipped her bag and turned, Kowalski's voice jabbed at her again. "You're traveling alone, right? Where exactly are you headed?" She paused, turned halfway, and studied him. "Yes, I'm alone," she replied, her tone laced with barely restrained impatience. "I'm flying to Chicago." Kowalski tilted his head, eyes narrowed. "Business or pleasure?" "Personal reasons," she said, her hackles rising. "Officer, I've complied with the search and the pat-down. Unless you have a specific concern, I'd prefer to be on my way." He seemed to weigh his words for a moment, a flash of something resentful crossing his features. But he eventually waved her off. "Then be on your way, ma'am." And just like that, Jade stepped free from the TSA checkpoint, tension radiating through her limbs. It was an inauspicious start to a day she had hoped would be smooth. Dragging her feet across the polished airport floor, Jade tried to shake off the creeping sense of injustice. Encountering suspicion as a black woman in a predominantly white male profession was nothing new. The memory of her first major flight review drifted back, how an older flight instructor had questioned whether she truly belonged in the cockpit or if she was fulfilling some diversity quota. He didn't say it outright, but the tone was their disbelief that she could competently handle an aircraft at 22 years old. Yet Jade had soared through flight school with top marks, fueled by her passion for aviation. She'd grown up near an airbase her father had served in the Air Force, and the roar of planes overhead was the soundtrack to her childhood. By the time she was 10, she could recite the specs of various aircraft and identify them by their silhouettes. That love never waned. She put in countless hours studying aerodynamics, instrumentation, and emergency procedures, building flight hours in single-engine planes before transitioning to larger craft. In the years since, she'd faced myriad challenges: sexism, racism, and well-meaning but patronizing remarks from passengers, colleagues, and even strangers. But Jade always kept her composure, rising above petty biases. She had the logs, licenses, and skill to prove herself, and she did so every time she took to the skies. Now, at JFK, the invasive search by TSA officer Kowalski felt like another test. She tried to brush it off, focusing on the day ahead. In a few hours, she'd be face to face with a panel of senior instructors and Czech airmen in Chicago. They had singled her out for advanced training, a sign the airline considered her a prime candidate to become a captain in record time. She wanted to arrive calm, collected, and confident, not roiled by a confrontation at security. Spotting a small cafe near her gate, Jade considered stopping for a quick breakfast. She glanced at her phone. She still had over an hour before boarding. Perfect. She could decompress, maybe text a friend about the TSA fiasco and laugh it off. However, as she neared Gate A7, she saw a commotion that made her heartbeat stutter. Officer Kowalski stood at the gate podium in heated conversation with a gate agent. Jade's brow furrowed in disbelief. How did he get here so fast? Why was he near her gate? A wave of unease swept through her. Was he targeting her specifically? She tried to remain inconspicuous, slipping behind a pillar to observe. Kowalski gestured to the gate agent, who shook her head as if uncertain. A moment later, the agent tapped on her computer, frowning at the screen. Could Kowalski actually be requesting passenger information? With a sinking feeling, Jade realized the situation might escalate further. She inched closer, close enough to overhear fragments of conversation. "She's a high-risk passenger, traveling alone," Kowalski said, his tone clipped. The gate agent, her name tag read Sonia Perez, looked perplexed. "There's no mention of that in the system." "Are you sure you have the correct name or flight details?" Jade's heart thundered in her chest. She was the only woman Kowalski had recently interrogated, and she was indeed traveling alone. Eavesdropping carefully, Jade heard him confirm a seat number. It was her seat number. She clenched her fists, outraged. Had he flagged her as some kind of security threat? Jade had two choices: either hide or confront the issue head-on. Hiding would only compound the suspicion, and her flight was crucial. She couldn't risk being denied boarding. Summoning the same courage that had carried her through flight school, she approached the gate podium. "Pardon me," she said, stepping forward. "Is there a problem with this flight or with my ticket?" Sonia, the gate agent, seemed relieved that the passenger in question had appeared. Kowalski's gaze snapped to Jade with an unmistakable flicker of annoyance. "Yes, Miss Randall," he said, reading off a small note in his hand. "We need to verify some information regarding your identity. You've been flagged for additional screening." Jade felt an electric jolt of anger. "Flagged by whom?" "I just went through security. You personally searched my bag and gave me a pat-down. I was cleared." Sonia interjected. "I'm sorry, Miss Randall. TSA Officer Kowalski here insists there's a discrepancy on your ID or a possible alias. I have no such note in my system, but if a TSA officer requests we hold a passenger, we can't let you board until they release the hold. This is ridiculous." Jade's tone was calm, but tight with frustration. "I've shown my ID. I have no aliases. What exactly is the discrepancy?" Kowalski stood taller, arms crossed. Ma'am, if you'll step aside, we can discuss this privately. Something in Jade snapped. She was done with being singled out publicly and then whisked into corners for humiliating searches. No, she stated firmly. I want to resolve whatever this is here in front of the gate agent, so there's a record of it, and I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Sonia Perez blinked, surprised by Jade's assertiveness. Kowalski's face reddened slightly, but he maintained his scowl. For a tense moment, no one spoke. Finally, Kowalski grumbled, I'll call for a supervisor if you insist. He stepped a few feet away, speaking into his radio. Jade exhaled, turning to Sonia. I'm sorry about this inconvenience, but I have a legitimate flight to catch. I'm due in Chicago for an important training. Sonia nodded sympathetically. I understand. In all my years at this gate, I've never seen an officer follow a passenger after clearing security. Let's see what the supervisor says. Passengers waiting for the same flight started to notice the standoff. A few curious onlookers approached the gate, while others scrolled their phones, half listening for drama. Jade felt her phone buzzing in her pocket. Her friend and fellow pilot, Melanie, was texting to confirm if Jade had arrived at the airport, but Jade couldn't focus on that now. The supervisor, TSA Lead Officer Beverly Chang, arrived within minutes. She walked briskly, a mixture of authority and concern on her face. Kowalski spoke with her in hushed tones, pointing in Jade's direction. Chang nodded, eyes narrowed with concentration, and then approached Jade. Good morning, ma'am. I'm Lead Officer Chang. I understand there's been some confusion regarding your screening status. May I see your ID once more? Sure, Jade said, producing her driver's license. She handed it over calmly, though her pulse pounded. Chang studied it carefully, flipping it front and back. Then she held it up to the overhead light and compared Jade's face to the photo, which matched her features exactly. All seems normal here, Chang said after a thorough inspection. We can also run it through our ID verification system. Kowalski interjected, I found her behavior suspicious at the security checkpoint. She was evasive. That's not accurate, Jade said, an edge creeping into her voice. I complied with everything you asked. You even searched my bag and found nothing. This is harassment. Chang asked Jade to wait as she typed Jade's details into a handheld device to confirm authenticity. After a few moments, the device beeped. Chang studied the screen. Everything is valid. No watch list hits, no discrepancies. Miss Randall, it looks like you're clear. A ripple of relief coursed through Jade. She reached for her ID. Chang handed it back with a nod. Please accept my apology for any confusion. I'll be reporting the details of this incident. You're free to board your flight. Kowalski clenched his jaw. Jade could see the tension radiating off him. He'd tried to paint her as a security risk and had just been contradicted by his own supervisor. Meanwhile, Sonia, the gate agent, typed furiously on her keyboard, presumably removing any hold on Jade's ticket. Kowalski muttered something under his breath. Chang shot him a warning glance. Realizing he had lost this particular power play, he turned on his heel and stomped away. Jade suspected this would not be the last she'd see of him that morning. Sonia exhaled in relief. Miss Randall, we'll start boarding in about 40 minutes. Let me upgrade your seat for the trouble. There's an extra space in economy comfort. Jade managed a small smile, touched by Sonia's kindness. That's very thoughtful. Thank you. Inside, however, Jade's anger simmered. She couldn't recall a security experience so blatantly targeted. She resolved not to let it ruin her day, but a voice in her head whispered that this might escalate further. People like Kowalski seldom let go of grudges easily. With the immediate crisis resolved, Jade found a seat at the small cafe. She ordered a bagel with cream cheese and a cappuccino. Sinking into a chair by a wide glass window, she gazed at the bustle of planes taxiing across runways. She'd always felt an unspoken kinship with airports, the sense of possibility, the thrill of flight, but this morning's run-in with Kowalski had cast a shadow. Pulling out her phone, Jade texted Melanie, "Jade at JFK Drama with TSA. Almost didn't make it to my gate. Melanie Wath, are you okay?" Jade, "Yes, but unbelievably annoying. This officer singled me out, called his supervisor. All good now, I hope." Melanie, people can be so ignorant. Let me know if you need backup. You want me to call Dave at HQ? He might be able to escalate if necessary." Jade, "Thanks, but I think I'm fine. Gonna board soon. I'll text you if something else happens." Melanie was one of the few close friends who truly grasped Jade's challenges. They'd met during flight training and formed a bond over the shared experience of being women, and specifically a black woman for Jade, in a traditionally male-dominated field. They had each other's backs, on duty or off. The idea of contacting Dave, a company liaison who handled pilot relations, was tempting, but Jade didn't want to stir up a bigger mess without good reason. She forced herself to breathe and savor the coffee. The upcoming flight was less than 2 hours, and upon arrival in Chicago, she'd be immersed in advanced training modules. Jade's mind wandered to cockpit procedures, engine performance metrics, and the new Boeing flight simulator she'd be testing. She tried to let that excitement overshadow the memory of Kowalski's glower. Time passed quickly. At the boarding announcement, Jade joined the line. Thanks to the seat upgrade, she got to board earlier than her original group. Sonia greeted her with a friendly smile, scanned her ticket, and said, "Have a safe flight, Miss Randall." Jade stepped into the jet bridge, letting the subdued hum of the plane's power unit wash over her. She moved down the aisle, found her seat, and placed her backpack in the overhead bin. The plane was a Boeing 737-800, a model she'd flown as a pilot many times, but today would ride as a passenger. Settling into her seat, she exhaled. As other passengers boarded, Jade thumbed through her phone, reading an article about new FAA regulations that might affect pilot rest requirements. Every now and then, she glanced up at the flow of people. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until she caught a glimpse of a dark blue uniform stepping onto the aircraft. Her pulse jumped. TSA officers rarely boarded planes except in unusual circumstances. Sure enough, it was Kowalski. He had a radio clipped to his belt and was speaking with one of the flight attendants at the front galley. A creeping dread seized Jade. Was this man truly going to keep harassing her, even after his supervisor cleared her? She sank lower in her seat, heart pounding, hoping he was on some unrelated mission. But her gut told her otherwise. Kowalski turned his head, scanning the cabin. Their eyes locked. His expression hardened. He said something to the flight attendant, who frowned. Then he began walking down the aisle. Passengers tracked him with curious looks. Some looked uneasy, others watched the drama with interest. Jade's mouth felt dry. She forced herself to remain composed. If Kowalski tried anything, she would calmly stand her ground. He stopped at Jade's row. "Miss Randall," he said in that same brusque tone, "I need a word." She glanced at the overhead bin, then at the passenger next to her, a middle-aged woman wearing a pink sweater who looked completely bewildered. Jade unbuckled and stood, stepping into the aisle. "What is it now?" she asked, voice low but firm. Kowalski lowered his voice so that only she could hear. "There's been a development. I need you to step off the aircraft, please." A swirl of anger and alarm erupted in Jade's chest. "No, I've already been cleared by your supervisor. Whatever development you're talking about, you can handle it here. I'm not leaving the plane unless I'm legally required to." In the cockpit, Jade could see the pilots preparing for pushback. The flight was moments from departure. The last thing she wanted was a confrontation that would delay everyone. Yet, she also refused to yield to what she believed was harassment. Passengers nearby were now openly staring. Kowalski gestured behind him. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Miss Randall. Don't make me call Port Authority Police for assistance." That did it. Jade's adrenaline soared. She caught sight of a flight attendant making her way down the aisle, obviously concerned. Another uniformed officer, maybe the pilot or first officer, peeked out of the cockpit. Tension ratcheted up with each passing second. Jade squared her shoulders. "Fine," she said, voice trembling with controlled fury. "But I'm letting the flight crew know I'm being taken off under protest." She turned and calmly informed the flight attendant, "He wants me off the plane. I haven't been told why. If I'm not back soon, please let the captain know this is an involuntary removal." The flight attendant's eyes widened in alarm, but she nodded, stepping aside. Kowalski smirked in a way that made Jade's skin crawl. She was sure he was relishing this moment of power. Jade walked up the aisle, the hush of the cabin pressing in on her ears. Faces blurred. She felt anger burning like a furnace in her chest. Beyond the airplane door, Kowalski guided her a short distance up the jet bridge, out of sight of passengers but still in the corridor. She whirled on him, crossing her arms. "What is the meaning of this?" He sniffed dismissively. "I just got word that your name might be linked to a stolen credit card used to buy your ticket. We need to verify your payment method." Her jaw dropped. It was utterly preposterous. Jade had used her personal credit card, the same one linked to her frequent flyer account. Also, airline employees often had special staff or discounted tickets, but she'd purchased this one normally to earn mileage. "This is a lie," she said, "and I suspect you know that." Kowalski raised his chin. "That's not for you to decide, ma'am. We take all allegations seriously." Her voice quivered, both with anger and a sudden urge to laugh at the absurdity. "Allegations from whom? You again? Where is your proof? Where is your supervisor? Where is the airline's representative? This is insane." He wagged a finger at her. "Watch your tone." Jade inhaled sharply, forcing herself not to curse. Instead, she pulled her phone from her pocket. "I'm calling the airline," she said, "and I'm calling my union rep. This is beyond the pale. If you're going to accuse me of credit card fraud, that's a serious charge, and I want all of this in writing." For a moment, Kowalski seemed taken aback by her confidence. Then he shrugged, as if trying to remain dominant. "Do what you need to do." Her mind raced. Should she reveal her pilot credentials right now? Perhaps that would get him off her back. But she also hated the idea that she had to leverage her status to be treated like a human being. The decision weighed heavily on her: remain incognito and fight this as an average passenger, or show him that he was messing with a fully credentialed first officer, a pilot who literally worked for the same industry he was supposed to protect. "Give me a moment," she said coolly, and she dialed the airline's customer service line for employees. The phone rang. Time seemed to slow. She anticipated a drawn-out process, listening to hold music while panic and anger gnawed at her. But then, miraculously, an employee line rep picked up quickly, Stacy, who recognized Jade's employee number, and asked how she could help. Jade rapidly explained the situation, the allegations, the forced deplaning, the repeated harassment by the same TSA officer. Stacy was horrified. "I'll escalate this immediately," she said. "But if they won't let you board, we might need a supervisor from the airline to come down in person." "Please do," Jade answered. She glanced at Kowalski, who watched her with that infuriating smirk. She ended the call, her heart hammering. "Your name is going on record," she told him, "along with every false accusation you've made." He snorted. "We'll see about that." As minutes ticked by, Jade paced the jet bridge, nerves fraying. She could see passengers inside the cabin shifting restlessly, aware their departure time was slipping away. The gate agent, Sonia, soon appeared, confusion evident on her face. "What's going on?" she asked Jade. "The flight crew wants to depart, but TSA says you've been flagged for alleged fraud." "That's what he's claiming," Jade said, pointing at Kowalski. "It's baseless. I've already spoken to the airline." Sonia tapped at her tablet. "Mitt Randall, the first see your ticket was purchased with a card ending in 7210, which is indeed under your name. I have no reason to believe there's a stolen card issue." Kowalski frowned. "Then check with your finance department or manager. Someone reported it, or so I was informed." His voice dripped with forced authority. Sonia stared at him, perplexed. "No one from our airline has reported any such thing. We wouldn't be boarding someone who used a flagged card." Jade's patience snapped. She dug into her backpack, rummaging through a hidden side pocket. Out came a slim, well-worn black wallet. From within it, she removed her pilot credentials, her Federal Aviation Administration FAA license, plus her official airline pilot ID with her photo, name, and rank clearly displayed. Turning to face Kowalski, she presented her ID. "Take a good look," she said, voice shaking only slightly. "I am First Officer Jade Randall, a pilot for a major airline. I fly Boeing 737s and 757s for a living. I purchased my ticket legally. I have no criminal record, no watch list flags, and no reason for you to keep me off that plane. Now, I demand a supervisor from TSA or airport management. Come here this instant." Kowalski's eyes widened. He glanced at the ID, then at Jade's face, then back at the ID again. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He had clearly not expected this turn of events. Behind him, Sonia's eyes sparkled with something akin to vindication. You're a pilot?" Kowalski stammered, losing a fraction of his bluster. "Yes," Jade declared, "and I'm not one to be bullied with false accusations." At that moment, TSA Lead Officer Beverly Chang reappeared, alerted by the airline staff. She immediately recognized Jade's pilot credentials. "Miss Randall," Chang said, nodding respectfully, "we had no notice that you were crew. Is this a non-rev trip or personal ticket?" "Personal ticket," Jade replied, "and it shouldn't matter whether I'm crew or not. Your officer has been harassing me since security. He forcibly patted me down, rifled through my bag, accused me of traveling under suspicious circumstances, and now he's claiming my credit card was stolen. It's all false." Chang's face clouded with concern. "Officer Kowalski, I wasn't informed of any stolen card allegations. Why did you remove Miss Randall from the aircraft without verifying with me first?" Kowalski swallowed hard. I got a tip." "What tip? From whom?" Chang demanded, arms folded. "We have strict protocols for reboarding or removing passengers. You can't just forcibly remove someone based on a tip with no documentation or evidence, especially after they cleared security and ID checks." Jade crossed her arms, letting the truth sink in for everyone. Kowalski had abused his power. A hush fell over the small group in the jet bridge. Sonia, the gate agent, hovered behind Chang, glancing occasionally at the plane's door, worried about the mounting delay. Chang sighed heavily. "Miss Randall, let me get on the phone with my superiors." "I apologize again. We'll rectify this immediately." She turned to Sonia. "Tell the flight crew we'll finish here in a minute. Miss Randall should be able to board." "Yes, ma'am," Sonia said, typing rapidly into her tablet. "I'll let them know we're almost ready." Kowalski looked livid, but he was outnumbered now. Jade sensed the momentum shift. Her righteous anger flared at the thought of all the time she'd lost, the embarrassment, the stress. Nevertheless, she appreciated that Chang was taking her side. Finally, justice seemed within reach. After a tense 5-minute conversation with TSA management on the phone, Chang hung up and addressed Jade. "We're clearing you to board. My apologies that you were removed from the aircraft in error. Officer Kowalski will need to file a written statement explaining his actions. I'll be reporting this directly to the airport authority as well." Jade nodded, relief flooding her veins. Thank you. I just want to get to Chicago. This fiasco has put me behind schedule. Chang offered a sympathetic smile. I understand completely. Again, I'm sorry for everything. Safe travels. Without another glance at Kowalski, Jade headed for the plane's open door. Sonia guided her down the aisle to her seat in economy comfort, ensuring no further disruption. Some passengers recognized her from earlier, eyebrows raised in curiosity. Jade tried to project calm, though her chest still hammered with leftover adrenaline. Inside, she sank into her seat, massaging her temples. This had been the worst pre-flight drama she'd ever experienced, and ironically, she wasn't even the pilot in command. She fastened her seatbelt. The flight attendant made an announcement that the cabin door was now closed, and they would push back momentarily. Through the window, Jade caught a glimpse of Kowalski and Chang standing at the jet bridge entrance, deep in conversation. Kowalski gestured wildly, but Chang's stern posture indicated he wasn't going to talk his way out of this. As the aircraft backed away from the gate, Jade felt a complicated swirl of emotions: anger at being subjected to such blatant profiling, relief that she'd maintained her composure, and determination that no one TSA officer or otherwise would treat her like that again without consequences. She reclined her seat slightly, exhaling as the plane taxied toward the runway. The flight itself was routine. The engines roared, the Boeing 737 soared into the sky, and flight attendants began service once the seatbelt sign was off. Jade felt the usual rush of exhilaration at takeoff, a reminder of why she loved aviation. Yet her mind lingered on the confrontation, the unfairness of Kowalski's behavior, and the many what-ifs. Had she been a less assertive person, or had she not possessed pilot credentials, would she be sitting in an airport interrogation room right now, missing her flight entirely? Around her, other passengers fiddled with tray tables, scrolled their phones, or watched the seatback monitors. The woman in pink from earlier sat across the aisle, giving Jade a small, friendly nod. Jade smiled back politely, guessing the woman was relieved the drama hadn't devolved into a serious delay. In quiet moments, Jade stared at the clouds outside. She thought about the countless travelers who pass through airports daily, many of whom endure extra scrutiny simply for their appearance. Her father's stories of being profiled in the Air Force decades ago echoed in her mind. The world had improved in some ways, but these episodes reminded her how far society still had to go. She also mulled over how best to respond. Should she file an official complaint beyond the statement Chang would submit? Could she share her experience with the pilot union? Jade's gut told her that doing so might help protect future travelers from encountering the same harassment. 90 minutes later, the plane touched down smoothly at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Jade felt a wave of relief. She had enough time to grab her bag and hustle to the airline's training facility in a nearby building. As she disembarked, the flight crew, aware of the situation, offered her understanding smiles and polite nods. The captain, a graying man in his 50s, even gave her a light pat on the shoulder and whispered, "Heard about what happened. Sorry you had to go through that." Jade murmured her thanks, stepping onto the jet bridge and then out into O'Hare's bustling concourse. She quickly located the courtesy shuttle that would take her to the training center, nestled in a separate campus not far from the terminals. Settling into a shuttle seat, she pulled out her phone. Dozens of notifications flooded her screen. Family, friends, and co-workers had seen some social media chatter about an incident at JFK. Apparently, a passenger had snapped a photo or short video of Jade being escorted off the plane. Melanie's text stood out. Melanie saw a tweet about a TSA fiasco at JFK. "That you?" Melanie. "You better give me the full story. People are outraged on Twitter." So it was already on social media. Jade sighed. The last thing she wanted was viral fame over a humiliating incident. but maybe the attention would spur the TSA to address the wrongdoing. A double-edged sword. She fired off a quick text to Melanie. Yes, that was me. Survived. In Chicago now. Will call soon. Then she tried to switch mental gears, focusing on the advanced training class she was about to attend. At the airline's Chicago training facility, Jade was greeted by a small group of fellow pilots who had also been chosen for the Advanced Skill Building program. This was a big deal. Only the top-rated first officers received an invitation, each with a strong shot at upgrading to captain within a year or two. Their mentor, Captain Eric Dyson, was an industry legend known for pushing his proteges to excel. "Welcome, Jade," Captain Dyson said warmly. "Heard you had a rough start this morning at JFK. Glad you made it on time." Jade gave him a polite smile. "Thank you, sir. It was an ordeal." He nodded, something flickering in his eyes that suggested empathy. Dyson himself was a black man who'd climbed the ranks in the 1980s, a time when African Americans in commercial cockpits were extraordinarily rare. Jade guessed that he understood, on a personal level, the undercurrents of bias she'd faced. The training session kicked off with classroom discussions about advanced flight management systems, emergency scenarios, and cutting-edge avionics. Then the group transitioned to a state-of-the-art simulator for hands-on drills. Jade threw herself into it with fierce focus, eager to prove her skill and let the humiliations of earlier fade into the background, at least for a few hours. Inside the simulator's faux cockpit, Jade felt like she was home. Confident, methodical, she breezed through complex multi-engine failure procedures and advanced instrument approaches. Captain Dyson occasionally peered over her shoulder, offering feedback. "Good job anticipating crosswind," he remarked, "and nice situational awareness." By the end of the day, Jade was mentally exhausted but proud. The TSA fiasco at JFK felt a world away, overshadowed by the rush of professional fulfillment. Still, reality would intrude soon enough. Later that evening, as she relaxed in a hotel room near the training center, Jade scrolled through her phone. She found a flood of online chatter about the TSA fiasco at JFK. A short cell phone clip had circulated on Twitter, showing Kowalski confronting her at the gate. The video captured Jade demanding to speak to a supervisor, her voice trembling with anger as she insisted she'd already been cleared. Comments ranged from supportive to outraged to downright hateful. Some ridiculed Kowalski. Others displayed disbelief that a random passenger would talk to TSA like that, while many more lauded Jade for standing up for herself. A smaller but vicious segment spat racist nonsense, claiming she must have done something wrong. She noticed a direct message from a local NYC journalist wanting to interview her about the incident. Another from an attorney offering legal representation if she wanted to sue. Jade felt uneasy about the sudden attention. She'd always cherished her relative anonymity, but part of her recognized that pushing back publicly might help deter future harassment. She decided to forward the journalist's message to the airline's communications department, letting them handle any official statements. Then her phone rang. A call from an unknown number. Jade almost let it go to voicemail, but answered on the third ring. "Hello?" she said, half expecting a telemarketer. "Randall, this is Captain Leah Monroe, TSA's regional director at JFK," came the voice. "Am I catching you at a bad time?" Jade sat up straight. No, it's fine." Monroe's tone was formal, yet apologetic. "I'm calling to apologize for the unacceptable conduct by one of our officers, Mr. Kowalski. We've initiated an internal investigation. I wanted to assure you that this matter is being taken very seriously. We're gathering statements from witnesses and reviewing all available footage. Officer Kowalski is currently on administrative leave." Jade's mouth fell open in surprise. She hadn't expected such immediate action. "I see. Thank you for letting me know. Is there anything you need from me? We have your statement from Lead Officer Chang, but if you wish to provide any additional details or file an official complaint, you can do so. We'll give you the necessary forms. It's entirely your decision, Jade considered. I appreciate the update. I will file a formal complaint. I believe what he did was blatantly discriminatory. I'd also like to ensure no future passenger pilot or otherwise experiences the same treatment. Monroe sounded genuinely contrite. Understood, we at TSA do not condone harassment or bias. If you prefer, we can have a meeting once you're back at JFK. For now, please accept our apologies. After the call ended, Jade felt a mix of satisfaction and lingering frustration. Kowalski was on leave, so apparently hard karma was beginning to unfold. Still, the memory of his smug face and invasive pat-down lingered. She resolved to see this through, not for revenge, but for accountability. Unbeknownst to Jade, back in New York, Officer Kowalski was learning that the wheels of internal investigations could grind painfully. The viral video had reached TSA higher-ups quickly. Coupled with Jade's formal complaint and the fact that multiple airline staff corroborated her side of the story, Kowalski faced mounting disciplinary measures. Suspended from duty, Kowalski sat in a small office cubicle used for administrative tasks. He'd been stripped of his regular duties, pending the outcome. His phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, some offering cautionary sympathy, others distancing themselves for fear of being associated with his meltdown. The morning after Jade's flight, Kowalski spent hours writing a statement in which he tried to justify his suspicions about Jade. He cited body language, uncooperative answers, and the alleged tip about a stolen credit card. But when pressed by investigators to produce evidence of that tip, he had nothing. It became glaringly apparent he'd fabricated or at least exaggerated the claims. Soon, the TSA's Office of Professional Responsibility stepped in. They requested logs, CCTV footage, and statements from other officers who worked near Kowalski that day. One colleague admitted overhearing Kowalski mutter racial slurs under his breath in the break room on occasion. Another testified that Kowalski had a history of over-scrutinizing travelers of color, though no formal complaints had previously stuck. With Jade's pilot credentials thrown into the mix and the public relations nightmare created by the viral video management was poised to make an example of Kowalski. He realized too late that he had cornered himself, and now there was no easy escape. Meanwhile, Jade continued her training in Chicago. By day, she immersed herself in simulator sessions, studying advanced cockpit resource management and leadership modules. By night, she wrestled with the choice of how publicly she should speak about her TSA ordeal. Despite the TSA director's apologies, the reality was that tens of thousands of people had already seen that footage. Should she hold a press conference? Post on social media? In the end, Jade decided on a measured approach. She drafted a post for her personal social media account, which she usually kept private but occasionally opened to the public for announcements. She wrote, "Friends, family, and fellow travelers, many of you have asked about the incident at JFK involving me and a TSA officer. I want to confirm that I was indeed removed from my flight under false accusations and subjected to invasive searches. The officer's claims were unfounded, and I was ultimately allowed to reboard." It's important to note that this is not just about me. I'm speaking up because too many people, especially people of color, experience profiling and harassment in travel. I am grateful to the TSA officials who are taking my complaint seriously and hope this can lead to better training and more accountability. Thank you for your support. She hit post. Within minutes, the notifications exploded. Supportive messages poured in from fellow pilots, family, and complete strangers who'd heard her story. Some expressed outrage, others shared their own experiences of racial profiling. A few trolls tried to claim she must have done something wrong, but Jade resisted the urge to engage. She knew the negativity wasn't worth her energy. After a week of intense training, Jade passed her evaluations with flying colors. Captain Dyson even joked that they should just promote her to captain immediately, though everyone knew the airline's policies required more flight hours and mandatory upgrade classes. Still, Jade left Chicago buoyed by success and anxious to return to New York to finalize the TSA complaint process in person. On her flight back to JFK, Jade wondered if she'd face any lingering drama. She boarded that plane wearing her pilot uniform, an unusual move for a traveling pilot, but she wanted to prove a point. She belonged here, and no one had any right to question her presence. As expected, the flight was uneventful. She arrived at JFK's busy Terminal 4 around noon. Captain Leah Monroe had arranged for her to meet with a senior TSA official, James Marshall, who oversaw compliance and ethics. Jade found her way to the TSA administrative offices. A polite receptionist guided her to a small conference room. Sitting at a plain wooden table, Jade faced Marshall, a composed man in a crisp shirt and tie. He had a folder stuffed with documents and a small digital recorder on the table. "Miss Randall, thank you for taking the time to come in," Marshall said. "We appreciate your patience throughout this investigation." Jade nodded. "I appreciate that the TSA is following up. I just want to make sure this never happens again to me or anyone else." "Understood. We've reviewed Officer Kowalski's actions and your statements. We have video evidence from the checkpoint cameras and the gate area. Coupled with eyewitness accounts, there's no doubt that his conduct was out of line. The official findings conclude that he targeted you unjustly, fabricated a tip about a stolen credit card, and violated standard procedures by removing you from the plane without supervisor approval." Jade exhaled slowly, relief mixing with lingering anger. "So what happens next?" Marshall folded his hands. "Officer Kowalski will face disciplinary action. We can't discuss the full details of an ongoing HR process, but I can say it's severe, likely termination. He's also subject to possible legal ramifications given his false statements. For you, Miss Randall, we'd like to formally apologize on behalf of the TSA. We are prepared to offer an official letter of apology and invite you to speak at our next training symposium about preventing bias in security screening." Her eyebrows rose. "Speak at a TSA training symposium?" Marshall nodded. "Yes, if you're willing. We believe hearing from someone with your perspective, a pilot who's also experienced profiling, could help us revamp our training modules. We aim to ensure every passenger is treated fairly, regardless of race, gender, or profession." Jade considered the offer. It was unexpected, but it aligned with her desire to make a difference. "I'll think about it," she said softly. "In principle, I'm open to it. I just need to be sure it won't conflict with my flight schedule or create more drama." He offered a small smile. "No pressure. We want to do what's right and show we're committed to reform." They discussed the details of her formal complaint, which Jade signed. Marshall handed her copies for her records and a sincere apology on official TSA letterhead. In the hallway, Captain Leah Monroe greeted her, repeating the TSA's regrets. Jade left the offices feeling a measured sense of closure. Kowalski was being held accountable, and changes might come from her ordeal. Before Jade could head home, she needed to retrieve her car from the employee parking lot on the opposite side of the airport. Walking through a corridor near baggage claim, she was startled to see a familiar, forlorn figure, Kowalski. He was dressed in civilian clothes, presumably packing up his locker or finalizing his exit. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time froze. He looked away, shame twisting his features. Then, in a move that surprised her, he stepped closer, though still at a respectful distance. "Miss Randall," he muttered. I guess you know I'm done here." Jade tensed, wary. It seemed so. He hesitated, as if debating how to speak. "Listen, I was out of line. And I'm sorry." The words sounded forced, but there was a glint of genuine regret in his gaze. "I've been dealing with personal stuff. Not that it excuses anything. I messed up big time." Jade studied him, remembering the rage and humiliation he had caused. Part of her wanted to lash out, to verbally tear him to shreds for every indignity. But she sensed no satisfaction would come from it. She'd chosen to stand up for herself in an official capacity, and the system had responded. She took a measured breath. "I hope you learn from this, because what you did to me you could have done to someone else who didn't have the resources or credentials to fight back." He nodded. "I know." His gaze flickered to the floor. "Best of luck in your career. You're obviously going places." Without another word, Jade stepped around him, heading toward the parking lot. She had no obligation to continue the conversation. Her mind buzzed with complicated emotions, but more than anything, she felt relief that she'd remained strong. Kowalski's downfall was of his own making. Now he had to grapple with the consequences. Over the next few weeks, life gradually returned to normal for Jade. She flew multiple trips, brushing shoulders with flight crews who congratulated her on how she handled the TSA incident. Word spread that Officer Kowalski had indeed been terminated, a cautionary tale whispered among airport staff. Meanwhile, the TSA training symposium invited Jade to deliver a brief talk about bias, which she accepted. On her scheduled day off, she stood in front of a group of new recruits and seasoned officers, explaining how unchecked prejudice can spiral into harassment and how crucial it is to treat every traveler with respect. Her story resonated with many in the room. Some asked thoughtful questions, eager to do better. Others shifted uncomfortably, perhaps recognizing their own biases. Jade ended her talk by emphasizing that security and fairness are not mutually exclusive. Both can thrive together if officers remain committed to professionalism. Afterward, the TSA leadership thanked her profusely, promising to incorporate her insights into revised protocols. Jade felt a sense of accomplishment, as if she'd transformed a painful experience into a catalyst for positive change. 3 months later, Jade's airline recognized her exceptional performance in advanced training by awarding her the official upgrade to captain, a step that usually took years. She donned a crisp new uniform with 4 stripes on each shoulder. Her father flew in from Georgia to pin her wings during a small ceremony at the airline's headquarters. With tears in his eyes, he told her how proud he was to see her break barriers in aviation. That evening, Jade hosted a gathering at a local restaurant, inviting friends, mentors, and co-workers to celebrate. Melanie was there, along with Captain Dyson, who teased that he always knew Jade would be an extraordinary pilot from day one. Even the TSAs. Captain Leah Monroe stopped by briefly to offer congratulations, a symbolic nod to the improbable alliance that had emerged from a tough situation. During a quiet moment at the party, Jade stepped outside to gaze at the city lights. She reflected on the tumultuous journey from being harassed at JFK, pulled off a flight under false allegations, to standing up for her rights, seeing accountability served, and helping to implement meaningful reforms. Above all, she'd grown as a person and as a pilot, forging a path others might follow with fewer obstacles in their way. Sometimes karma moved swiftly, other times slowly, but it always caught up in the end. Thank you for joining us on this dramatic journey of resilience and triumph. In a space as busy and complex as John F. Kennedy International Airport, A moment of prejudice could have ended Jade Randall's aspirations, but instead, it ignited a powerful stand for justice. Jade's courage showed that even in the most tense and intimidating environments, truth and integrity can prevail. Her confrontation with the TSA officer and the revelation of her status as a pilot shattered assumptions and inspired meaningful reforms at one of the world's busiest airports. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and share it with others who value fairness, equality, and perseverance in the face of adversity. And if you want to see more stories that highlight how ordinary people transform challenges into victories, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Your support keeps these important narratives flying high. Thank you for watching and keep soaring.